In the warm, memory-laced world of young Sheldon, the characters orbit each other with familiar gravity, siblings squabble, parents strain to connect, and yet love pulses through the center of it all. When Georgie and Mandy finally tied the knot, viewers were treated to a moment that shimmered with redemption and growth. What began as an accidental pregnancy between a wayward teen and an independent older woman evolved into something tender, real, and surprisingly enduring. But just as fans grew accustomed to their dynamic, the narrative rug was pulled. Georgie and Mandy exited the series. Their departure marked a bittersweet transition, not just for them, but for the entire Cooper family. While character exits are common in long-running shows, this one was particularly jarring. Why? Because it made one looming, inevitable story nearly impossible to wrap with the emotional completeness it deserved: the death of George Sr. The ghost of a story not fully told. Anyone who's followed the Big Bang Theory universe knows the fate of Sheldon's father. His death is canon. It casts a long shadow over young Sheldon from the very first episode. The show was always a prequel with a ticking clock. But like any good story, it tried to breathe life into the days before loss, finding joy in small-town Texas, humor in dysfunction, and hope in broken people trying to become better. For George Sr., the story has always been walking the line between who he was remembered to be and who he actually was. Through Sheldon's adult voiceovers, the elder Cooper was painted as a drunk, often inattentive, and distant. But young Sheldon worked to rewrite, or at least reframe, that memory. Here, George Sr. was complex. Flawed, yes, but also trying, loving, and layered. So, what does Georgie and Mandy's exit have to do with that? Everything. The broken circle. In a family drama, everyone plays a role in the grand finale. George Sr.'s death isn't just an event, it's the emotional crescendo of the series. It's the turning point after which nothing is the same. It should be an unraveling and a weaving, the tearing apart of a family and their slow stitching back together through grief. But with Georgie and Mandy gone, that circle is broken. Georgie isn't just a brother, he's the eldest son. The one who took on responsibility before he was ready. The one who dropped out of school to support a child. The one who watched his father more closely than he let on. His reaction to George Sr.'s death should have been a cornerstone of that final arc, an emotional mirror of how far both characters had come. And Mandy, she represented Georgie's stability, his growth, and his future. Her presence would have offered a unique outside perspective, an adult looking in at the Cooper family's grieving process with both empathy and boundaries. She could have been a bridge for Missy, a comfort for Mary, or even a mirror for Mima, reflecting just how deeply George Sr.'s loss hit each generation. Without them, what should be a full symphony of grief risks becoming a muted solo. A marriage that meant more than vows. Georgie and Mandy's relationship was more than just a storyline. It was a quiet revolution in the young Sheldon timeline. Georgie, often portrayed as a doofus in Big Bang Theory, was recast in young Sheldon as someone brimming with potential and emotional depth. Mandy wasn't just a love interest. She was a challenge, a support system, and eventually, family. Their marriage was symbolic. It was a resolution for a character often treated as comic relief in the broader universe. Their union was one of the show's most significant signs of hope. That people can evolve, that mistakes can lead to something beautiful, and that even in the Coopers' chaotic home, something stable could grow. So when they left, it felt like more than just characters being written out. It felt like the show's emotional scaffolding had been quietly dismantled. Closure denied. The thing about death, especially in stories, is that it demands confrontation. Characters need to wrestle with what was said and unsaid, with regrets and reconciliations, with guilt and grace. George Sr.'s death is supposed to be that moment. And yet, without Georgie there, the story feels incomplete. How does the eldest son react when his father dies before ever telling him he's proud? Does Georgie, the new husband and father, worry that he didn't say goodbye? Does he carry that pain into his own parenting? Without Mandy, who grounds him, who helps him through that loss? How does the family find a new normal when key voices in that conversation have been silenced? By removing Georgie and Mandy before this emotional climax, the writers inadvertently created a void, one that can't be filled by Sheldon's intellectual musings or Missy's teenage rage alone. It's not just about screen time, it's about emotional weight, and without their presence, that weight tips unevenly. A difficult story to end. Maybe this is intentional. Maybe the writers are echoing life. How sometimes people leave before you get to say goodbye. How not every story gets the perfect send-off. That's a valid artistic choice, but it's also a painful one for viewers who've invested in the full, messy, beautiful tapestry of the Cooper family. Georgie and Mandy were part of that tapestry. Their absence in the show's final act doesn't just alter the picture, it unravels part of the thread. The echo that remains as young Sheldon approaches its end. George Sr.'s death will undoubtedly shake the foundation. The family will grieve, Sheldon will intellectualize, Mary will break and rebuild, and Missy will burn with fury and sorrow. But viewers will feel the echo of what's missing. Georgie should have stood beside his siblings at the funeral. Mandy should have comforted Mary when no one else could. Their baby, George Jr.'s namesake, should have been a poignant symbol that life moves forward, even when we lose the ones who shaped us. Instead, we're left with a beautiful, incomplete story, a family fragmented not just by death, but by absence. And that might be the hardest story of all to end. If you'd like a different take, maybe from Mandy's POV, or as a fan editorial, I can adapt this.